The Haunting of St. Mercy Hospital. St. Mercy Hospital was one of the oldest in the city, a towering relic of Gothic architecture with crumbling stone walls and ivy creeping up its facade. Originally built in the late 1800s, it had served as a sanatorium, a quarantine station, and eventually a general hospital. Over the years, it gained a grim reputation for being a place where strange occurrences were a common part of the night shift. The beginning of the night. It was a stormy evening when Sarah, a new nurse, began her first overnight shift at St. Mercy. The hospital seemed quieter than usual, as most patients had been discharged ahead of the coming storm. Only a skeleton crew was on duty. Sarah, an older nurse named Helen, and a security guard named Tom. During the handover, Helen warned Sarah about the hospital's quirks. If you hear voices in the old wing, don't follow them, and whatever you do, don't go to the basement, she said with a knowing smirk. Sarah chuckled nervously, thinking it was just hazing. But as she walked through the dimly lit halls, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The flickering fluorescent lights cast long, eerie shadows, and the hum of medical equipment was oddly rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. The first incident, around 1 a.m., Sarah was checking on a patient in room 304 when she noticed something strange. The patient, an elderly man recovering from surgery, was staring intently at the corner of the room.
Is everything okay, Mr. Thompson?
Sarah asked.
She is watching us.
The man whispered with his voice trembling.
Who? Who is watching us?
Sarah asked, glancing at the empty corner.
The woman in black.
He replied, his eyes widening.
She's always watching.
Sarah dismissed it as delirium and comforted him until he fell asleep. But as she turned to leave, she felt a cold draft, even though the window was shut tight. An hour later, Sarah decided to grab a coffee. The hospital's cafeteria was in the basement, and as she stepped into the elevator, she pressed the button for the ground floor. But instead of going down, the elevator began to ascend. The digital display showed it was heading to the 13th floor. Confused, Sarah frowned. St. Mercy didn't have a 13th floor. Like many old buildings, it skipped the number due to superstition. She pressed the button for the ground floor again, but the elevator continued its ascent. When the doors finally opened, Sarah was greeted by a long, dark hallway. The air was cold, and the walls were lined with dusty gurneys and broken wheelchairs. There were no lights, just the faint glow of a flickering bulb far in the distance.
Hello!
She called, her voice echoing unnaturally. Helen explained that the hospital's 13th floor was rumored to be a portal of sorts, a place where the spirits of those who died in agony lingered. Many of them were patients from the hospital's early days, when treatments were more experimental than humane. Despite Helen's warning, Sarah couldn't resist her curiosity. Around 3 a.m., she decided to investigate the basement, where Helen claimed the hospital's darkest secrets were hidden. Armed with a flashlight, Sarah made her way to the basement. The storm outside had knocked out some of the power, leaving the corridors shrouded in darkness. As she walked deeper into the basement, she noticed strange symbols carved into the walls, circles, triangles, and what looked like human faces screaming in agony. She finally reached a locked metal door labeled Morgue Restricted Access. The padlock was old and rusted, but it hung open. Against her better judgment, Sarah pushed the door open. Inside, the room was freezing. The morgue slabs were empty, but a faint humming sound filled the air. It wasn't mechanical. It sounded like someone humming a lullaby. As Sarah scanned the room, her flashlight flickered, and she saw her breath in the cold air. Then in the corner, she saw her. A woman in a tattered black dress stood with her back to Sarah, her long matted hair dripping water onto the floor. Her shoulders jerked with each hum, as if she were sobbing and singing at the same time.
Ma'am, are you okay?
Sarah asked, her voice quivering. The humming stopped abruptly. The woman turned and Sarah gasped. The woman's face was pale and bloated, her eyes sunken, and her lips twisted into an unnatural smile. Water dripped from her hair and sleeves, pooling at her feet. Before Sarah could react, the woman lunged forward, her face contorted in rage. Sarah screamed and dropped her flashlight as she fled the morgue, her footsteps echoing in the dark hallway. When Sarah reached the nurse's station, Helen and Tom were already there, their faces pale.
You shouldn't have gone down there.
Helen whispered.
She's attached to you now.
What do you mean?
Sarah demanded, but Helen wouldn't elaborate. In the following weeks, Sarah experienced strange phenomena. Objects moved on their own, whispers echoed in empty rooms, and she often saw wet footprints leading to her locker. Eventually, she quit her job at St. Mercy, but the hauntings followed her home. To this day, Sarah claims she still sees the woman in black standing at the foot of her bed, watching her with that same twisted smile. Some say St. Mercy Hospital is still operational, but the 13th floor and the basement remain sealed, holding the dark secrets of its past. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for listening. Until next time. Bye-bye.